This episode is brought to you by Chefs Making Waves. Destination, New England. A 4-day food, wine, and spirits festival at sea. Presented by Sixthman, EBG, and A21. Sailing October 24th to 28th, 2025, from Boston to Portland, Maine, and St. John, New Brunswick, this unforgettable voyage brings fall flavors, picturesque ports, and world-class culinary experiences to the high seas with celebrity chefs, including Alex Gurnishelli, Alton Brown, Eric Ajapong, and Andrew Zimmern, for ship-exclusive curated dinners, cooking demonstrations, culinary conversations, and more. Plus, a premium beverage package is included. Reserve your cabin now at boston.chefsmakingwaves.com and taste the best of New England at sea.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
This episode is brought to you by Visit Ithaca, where great minds meet the great outdoors. Check them out at visitithaca.com. Ithaca is known for outstanding dining and local cider, wine, and beer. And here's a quick word from one of these great local businesses.
My name is Steve Seelan from South Hill Cider. So I started making cider about 20 years ago, and I made cider exclusively from wild apples for the first 10 years. And then around 2014, I decided to plant some actual cider apples in an orchard to start cider production just like a small winery. We have a tasting room. You can see the orchard, you can see the valley, and we pour tastings of our ciders. We have about 20 different ciders that we make. So there are beautiful hiking trails and gorges and waterfalls all over this area. And in fact, we're located right on the Finger Lakes Trail, where in 15 minutes you can walk down to a 140-foot waterfall that's on a land trust property.
If you're looking for a weekend away, you can't do much better than Ithaca. Check out visitithaca.com for more information and get to where great minds meet the great outdoors.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest Romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome back for another new season of Pizza Quest. For those of you who are new to our show, we describe Pizza Quest with a few catchphrases. The first is that it is a journey of self-discovery through pizza. But we also say that we celebrate artisanship wherever we find it and on any topic. And finally, we always remind you that it is more about the quest than it is about the pizza. So pizza is our guiding metaphor, yes, and we always come back to it. But today's guest is the personification of our deeper purpose in celebrating artisanship and also seeking out folks who have a deep commitment to their own quest, whatever it may be. Ellen King is the co-founder and head baker of Hewn Bakery in Evanston, Illinois, and author of the beautiful book, Heritage Baking, Recipes for Rustic Breads and Pastries Made with Artisan Flour from Hewn Bakery. It also has been described as a step-by-step guide to one-of-a-kind recipes. Welcome to Pizza Quest, Ellen.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It's great to have you, because as a bread guy, you know, I'm excited to be able to talk to another fellow bread geek. And but let me start with something. The book has a title that has a lot to unpack. So before we hear about your personal journey and how you came up with the fabulous name Hewn for your bakery, can you describe what makes your baked goods at Hewn one of a kind?
Well, that's a bold question. That's
Yeah.
hard to
Well,
answer.
it was a
And
bold statement in your, and it's on the Amazon, sort of blurb is one of a kind
yeah,
recipes.
um,
It's not
you
just
know,
marketing, I know.
yeah, I think honestly, it's just the ingredients that we use. So the grains that we work with, we utilize majority of our local grains from the Illinois and Wisconsin region. So we're really lucky to be surrounded by great farmers that work with us and partner with us. And but then it's also just like even all the other ingredients that we use as well. So like our butter, the milk, all of it, it all plays into the ingredients. And then, obviously all of the people that we have working at the bakery, they care so much that we don't cut corners. So each time we're like true to the process.
Well, I know, I mean, being near Wisconsin, I know that you're going to have great butter and dairy, but I never had thought of Wisconsin or Illinois as being a wheat and grain state, but apparently it is. You've got great grains there as well.
Well, I mean, come on. I was a history major, so the Illinois in particular is where the hub of all grain grading started. It's also a hub of where wheat was grown back in the 1840s. So, like, you wouldn't have graded wheat, the berries or anything, without the 1848 stock exchange being created in Chicago.
Oh,
So,
yeah, yeah,
and then you have
yeah.
like the McCormick Reaper here. You have John Deere. All of that was invented here, breaking the prairie open to farming.
That's interesting. It's hard you don't always make those connections when you're so distanced from time from when all that happened historically. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I want to dive back into that your history background and the things you did before you became a baker that led you somehow you've ended up in Evanston, but you're not from Evanston, right? You're are you a West
No.
Coast person? Like, are you from
You
Washington
know,
or where? You've
I
been
I
everywhere.
feel like yeah, I feel like I'm just like that pound puppy that's just like a mud of everything. Like, my back, I like really have nothing that's like I just like absorb wherever I go and I just adapt. But my family's from the East Coast, so I spent time growing up there when I was little. My
Okay.
dad's from Boston area, my mom's from Long Island, so it was a very heated and very linguistically diverse background. You got the
Yeah.
Boston accent and the New York accent.
I'm just hearing a little tinge of it, the little bit of the Boston still
Probably
there.
this, yeah, the slightest bit,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
really, I think, and then my family moved to the Midwest and I hated it. And I literally tried to get out of the Midwest forever. But I went to college and studied history in Wisconsin
Mm.
at a small school, not UW Madison. I was a terrible student. I was so bad that I only got accepted to two schools. One was Montana State, and
Ah,
Jeff and I have something
yeah.
similar with there.
Yeah, our producer Jeff is a Montana State guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got there and then a small school called St. Norbert in Wisconsin. And then I went to grad school and studied history and finally got back east and went to Maine, University of Maine.
Oh,
And so Maine is actually where the name Hewn came from. So it's kind of I always joke that getting my graduate degree might have been the most expensive or the cheapest way to come up with a business name that I like filed away for 15 years at
yeah.
least.
Yeah, right. It's a word that just kind of like it has so many levels of meaning for you that it's great that you had it in the back of your mind. It's something you could build around. Well,
That's right. Yeah.
in fact, I think you have this quote in the book um, about the word hewn itself. I think if this is the correct definition. The hewn is cut or shaped by striking forcibly with an axe, a sword, or other cutting instrument. Chopped, hacked, as used in colonial times to describe hand-hewn beams. It's
Hmm.
made, shaped, smoothed with cutting blows as to hew a statue. So really, it has nothing to do with bread per se, but somehow, you've made that metaphorical leap over.
Yeah, I mean, because right, you use the bench scraper to divide, and it's like the same kind of act of like cutting forcefully through the gluten strands. And and it's an old English word, and I always joke that I was like, I'm not. I've tried to learn French, and I'm failed so many levels of French, and so I'm like, I'm just so American that it's got
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
an
yeah.
English word.
Well, you got
So
got that colonial influence in Boston and the in the New England area where you were first raised and all that
That's right.
Mayflower influence,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
but hewn is a cool word. It's just a great word. And hue, the word hue itself, has it's not a word you hear every day, but it's cool that you're able to bring it back and make it relevant for today.
Yeah. Yeah. It like my history degree influenced the name, it influenced the design of the bakery, and then it also influenced my work to, when we opened in 2013, really researching. I mean, I guess the irony is I lived out in Seattle before I moved back to Chicago. I went to culinary school in Seattle.
Okay,
And
that's where I thought you were from Washington. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so I lived out there for 9 years and went to culinary school and then worked in different places out there and really got exposed to wood-fired ovens in Eastern Washington at Quillisasket Farm. But when I came back to the Midwest, I thought, well, I wasn't that excited to be back. No offense to the Midwest listeners, but
Yeah.
it was like you're living on coasts, right? You have
Yeah.
mountains and ocean.
Yeah. It's hard to get people to out of those. Once you're there, you usually don't want to leave.
You don't want to leave. And when I came back to the Midwest, I was like, well, at least there'll be great farming and I'll have access to really like close wheat fields and everything. Well, that was not the case in, 2010 when I started kind of like the process of doing this. I literally was like, do I just go knock on a farm door? Like, how do I get these people to like, connect like almost how you buy a tomato, right? Like, where are
Yeah.
these farmers markets for wheat?
Right. Right.
And they just didn't exist. And so I actually then, through my history degree, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to the Madison Library and just read through old journals, just start like learning about all the varieties that were grown, in the last 150 years. And so I like educated myself about the farming process. And then once I had that, then I met a farmer. Her name was Andy Hazard, and she has a farm. It's her portion is relatively small in Northwest Illinois,
Mm.
but she comes from like a fifth generation family of farmers as well. And she kind of was the person that kind of started to introduce me to different varieties, and we kind of worked together to like bring back a variety at the time that hadn't been grown. And that was just kind of like a project for us to just, is this possible? Like, can you do this? Like,
Was
and
this all
she's
before you
such
started the bakery?
the project of like growing the variety. We had opened the bakery and been in business for about a year. So 2015 is when we started, maybe 2014, 2015, we started growing a variety from just a kilo of seeds that she had gotten.
Amazing, amazing. And what you were doing, both time-wise and, just in nature is coincides so much with what was happening in other regions around the country. We have almost a parallel story going on here in the Carolinas with Carolina Ground, which was started
Yeah.
as a bakery, and Jennifer Lapidus, the baker there, kind of decided to become a miller and did what you did, hooked up with farmers to grow very specific, regionally specific grains. So this idea of regionally specific was its own thing. And then the
Yep.
cottage bakery movement was happening around that time, where people were opening small artisan style bakery. I mean, it's almost like what's the word? It's like you know, I can't remember the word, when
Kismet.
synchronicity or something like that.
Yeah. Serendipity. Yeah.
Yeah. That it's happening similarly in many places, and you were kind of like, right on the cusp of that. You were on the wave of making that happen regionally
That's
for
right.
you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was exciting. Now I feel like it's a little bit more mature, in our region, at least, with having access to such great varieties and a miller that is able to kind of like produce as much as we need and whenever we need it.
That is great. I mean, and of course you spent some time in Maine as well. Were you in
Yep.
Skowhegan at all for the
Yep.
for the the, the kneading conferences that were happening there?
Yep.
Same thing. And there's a great mill in Skowhegan also that's Maine Grains, right? That is
Yep.
doing
Main
very
Grains is
similar.
phenomenal.
So, is there any kind of a coalition that's forming between all these various regional, millers and bakers that are doing the same thing, but specific to their regions, that kind of get together and share war stories?
That's a great, I don't like I know each region has a gathering, and I think it's still not, I mean, maybe I'm just on the out. I feel like maybe I'm a bit more of a loner. I just get lost in my own thoughts, or projects.
You're the outlier.
And yeah, maybe people are like, yeah, don't you know about this? And it might be. I think that I know that, in Skagit at the Bread Lab, they used to always have the yearly gathering. I think the
That's
pandemic,
right. That's where the Kneading Conference actually started in Washington State. And then Maine,
yeah,
I think they decided to do an East Coast version of that.
yeah. And then the pandemic kind of like everything kind of fractured. And I think maybe things are starting to come back, but I don't know. That's a great, why don't, Peter, hello, why don't
Hello.
you
Well,
start it?
actually, I think I can think of a few people like Jennifer, for instance, Jennifer Lapidus in here in Carolina, who's a great organizer. She's a community builder too. And the folks up in Skowhegan at Maine Grange are similar in that
Yep.
regard. It's inevitable. There's got to be, and of course we put
It'd
on,
be fun to float around, right? Where you
yeah,
go like, okay, this year it's here, next year it's there.
that would be cool. That would be really, really well.
Maybe up in
We put
Door
on a
County, we can.
We put on a bread symposium at Johnson and Wales University every few years. We're working on doing a new one in 27, where we
Okay.
and this is the theme. The theme for the 27 symposium is going to be on grains and regional grains and regionally specific grains and things like that. So that's another place where we can kind of bring out everybody together, maybe to get it launched. But I loved your idea of like moving it every year to a different region.
That would be, yeah, that just would be fun to like also just see everybody's region and learn about it in depth. And yeah, I mean, I'll throw up Door County because I'm in the process of rehabbing this place and
Oh,
getting
that's
some
right.
cool.
You're building a
Yeah,
cabin up there. Yeah. Well, for
yeah.
those of you who are listening who are bread geeks like us or fermentation freaks, we're all the same. It's very kindred spirits who are into fermentation and bread and pizza and you name it. But if you ever hear about these the regional milling grain gathering, you heard it here first. This is where it started, maybe from this conversation. We planted the seed and we'll see if it grows.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Cool. So let's you started to get the grains growing that you wanted to be able to work with, which is its own challenge because these are not the same. It's not the same wheat that the big mills like General Mills and King Arthur and all those companies. They have it pretty well tested. You're working with grains that are somewhat untested and have different properties, functional properties when you're trying to bake bread. What was that learning curve like for you?
Yeah, working with Janie's Mill in particular, like, so we've worked with kind of three different mills in particular that we really source our grains from. Janie's Mill and then Meadowlark in Wisconsin.
Uh,
And they both are kind of robust enough to be able to meet our demand. But in the early stages of trying to get the grain milled, I mean, I joke with the miller at Janie's, as she jokes with me, she's like, it was like sawdust what we were bringing to you at first. I was like, it was a little coarse. There was a little too much brand and germ in some of it.
it's
But
the learning curve.
it was a big learning curve. But we kind of just slowly, we didn't really know where we were going or what we were doing, but we knew what we wanted to achieve with the bread. So it really was like just kind of like, don't, I think it's a lot of time it's like when people are trying to bake bread, they get so upset if they make mistakes, right? Because you just want to have a loaf that you can eat. But if you remove the time frame of like having something that you can eat and just like enjoy the process, kind of like your whole tagline of it's the quest, right? For
Yeah,
Pizza
right,
Quest.
exactly.
If you allow that to kind of be like the whole objective, then it's a lot more fun and it's like you really get to learn along that way. And fortunately we had Janie's Mill that was, really doing the heavy lifting because I'd be like, we can't do, I'm sorry, I can't, like, this did not work. And be like, okay, we're starting back. And you need a miller and a farmer who has that. And most of the farmers I know do have that mentality of they create their own tools. And Harold's son Ross, who runs the farm with Harold and the mill, he started creating all these incredible screens and this whole system, like what they saw out at Camas Country. And then
Yeah.
they developed this process to, stone mill the grains and then sift it to the level that we need. So it's really amazing to have.
At the bread symposium, we referred to that as the Farmer Miller Baker Coalition. and it's and that is again, I think, you know, a signifier of what's been happening in this artisan movement is these various specific skilled, artisans in their area working together to create something new, to almost reinvent bread baking, for
Yeah,
Americans.
it's true. Yeah, and it's like, we don't have a lot of that knowledge left. And stone mills of themselves. I mean, I think Harold put in the first large stone mill for the first time in 100 years
Wow.
into our region. And now Meadowlark has a stone mills as well in their region, and it's really amazing. And I'm so lucky to have that because honestly, it wouldn't be fun to bake bread without having your regional. It's like a chef not being able to source local produce, right? To cook.
Exactly.
And I feel like, there is a place. I'm not going to say that there isn't a place for, really low extracted flour that is like a patent flour. I mean, there is a place for that. So I'm not going to say that
So
is
when, just for
evil.
those people who are not as deep into the bread thing as we are, so when
Right.
you refer to something like patent flour or low extraction, we're really talking about white flour as opposed to high extraction flour, which still has some of the bran and the germ, in there. Not whole wheat, but still enough in there to give it some earthy qualities. Is that a good definition, would you say?
Well, yeah, you're the master of this,
Well, it's just I don't
Yeah.
know. I always feel like I'm still learning, and that's why I love talking with folks like you because you're on the forefront now. I'm old, I'm OG, and now but you're doing it now and dealing with the issues of today. But I mean, you're sort of the last piece of that coalition. You're the baker. You're the one who has to take all the work of the farmer and the work of the miller to bring to you a flour that you can transform into magical bread, and that's so you're the piece that gets a lot of the maybe public glory because you're the bread producer, knowing in your heart that there's all these other people behind you. There's what do they call it, a village of of partners in all of this to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I was a soccer player, so it's like I'm the one that scores the goals, that gets all the
Yeah.
like cheering, right? But it's like everybody else that did the heavy lifting to really make it
You-
successful. So
yeah.
yeah, I think, but it is a heavy weight because it's like all of this care that went into growing this wheat, milling the wheat, and so we have to be thoughtful about what we produce and why we produce it and how we produce it because there's so much that goes into wheat growing.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something that the buyer at the end user, so to speak, is not thinking about all those things as much as we are. But without it, you wouldn't have the product. But I want to talk about your product and what you're trying to create. And here's another quote that I got from your introduction of the book.
Okay.
And I love this because this says it all. The crust and crunchy and slightly dusty. I'm sorry, the crust, crumbly and slightly dusty, crackles between your teeth. The crumb, with its many irregular holes, is spongy to the bite. Good bread is airy, not at all dry, and light, but also rich, satisfying, and soulful. That's the holy grail right there. I mean, that's what and when the key word for me, a little phrase here for me is just not at all dry, because when you bite into a loaf of bread and there's that creamy, it almost feels custard-like quality to it. It's a game changer. It
Yeah.
ruins you for other bread after that, and it's got to be kind of one of your guiding, lights for you to try to achieve
That
that.
Yeah, I mean the cookbook, I feel like I wrote that, gosh, I call it pre-pandemic. So like my
Yeah, I mean the
memory
book's been
is,
out
and
for for almost 8 or 9 years now, right? So
let's see, I think it was published in 2019,
19.
right
Okay.
before the pandemic. So
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
5, 6 years. And it's like when I travel and I find the place that's making the bread, right? And it always gets me so excited when I'm like in a new city and I'm like, ah, there's the bread. And it makes me so excited to like see other people and taste the bread that they're making. And you feel, like they're your, like colleagues, even though you
Yes,
don't know them.
exactly,
But
exactly.
right? It's like, it is the best thing because there's so often bread that is not as flavorful and as maybe thoughtful. But to find the artisan bread in each town makes you feel at home.
Yeah, there's kind of like a fellowship of the ring among bakers
Yeah,
around the country.
yeah, that's
There
right.
was a time in the early days of the artisan movement where bakers were very secretive about their techniques and recipes because it was all so new. But now, one of the hallmarks of both the pizza world and the bread world, because pizza is really just a subset of bread, when you
Yeah,
think about it, is that the generosity of sharing between, the folks who view each other as colleagues as opposed to competitors, because there's enough market to go around if you're doing good work.
yeah. I mean, it's like when you go to France, right? There's like so many bakeries on every, like multiple, like sometimes three, right? Almost next to each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they all have a different clientele.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, heck, one of our first things that happened to us early on in the bakery was somehow our starter got fully discarded. And I didn't have like a backup, and I had to reach out to a baker in Chicago, Floriole,
Oh yeah.
and she generously gave me some starter to like rebuild. I was like, without her, it would have been a little bit before I had my starter back going again.
The same thing happened to Acme Breads in Berkeley about
Oh,
40 years ago. I don't know when they were like new and they were a game-changing bakery in the West Coast, and a disgruntled employee dumped their starter out in the alley behind the bakery and stormed off thinking that I'll show you. And
yeah.
but it didn't take long for them to, get a new starter going, but also to get support from the other bakers. It is very collegial that way. And you
Yeah.
say starter is all of your bread sourdough bread, is it naturally fermented or do you use yeast?
Yeah. All of our bread is 100% sourdough. We don't add any yeast into the breads. The baguette and the ciabatta, it does use an equal part Polish and starter. So those are the only two that use a little bit.
So the Polish is like a pinch of yeast that
Yeah.
bubbles up as a pre-ferment, and then the
Yep.
starter itself is a pre-ferment. So basically, it's a two-pronged method.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So the craft itself, we're getting deep into the craft of bread baking. That part of it. But let me just go back to the sourdough thing because we're seeing in guests that we've had over the last couple of years on Pizza Quest how and the pandemic seemed to be a player in all of this is the fascination with sourdough fermentation and how many bakeries are moving over from yeasted breads to almost exclusively sourdough based breads and pizzerias doing the same thing, going to sourdough pizza dough crusts, which hardly existed at all,
Hmm.
maybe 10, 15 years ago. And now it's the thing. It's I don't know, it's almost like uh the calling card now for new people. We talk a lot to pizza folks who are getting into the pizza world to say, listen, everyone's going sourdough. Are you doing that too? And people are expecting it now.
See, that's my next hobby is pizza. Like I've played with it, but now I really am committed to oh, we got a guest in the background.
Oh, cool, cool.
We
Where are you? Are you in the bakery itself, or are you
I
where?
no, I wish this were the bakery. No, this is
It's very
I'm in Door
hewn behind you.
County.
There's a lot of
It
it's all hewn wood behind you.
Yeah, that's right. It's a log cabin that we're rehabbing
Oh,
right
you
now.
rehab. Oh, cool. Yeah. But yeah, so the sourdough thing, it seems like, well, did you start with that or did you begin
Yeah,
more?
I've always, I have to be honest that the way I got started, I mean, I went to culinary school for savory. So I worked the line in restaurants in Seattle. I just was a great consumer of bread and very picky about bread, even back then.
And Seattle has a
And
good bread scene too.
they do have a great bread scene, a great food scene overall.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
when I moved to Chicago, I didn't want to be working back in restaurants because my son was young and I didn't want to be working those hours where I would literally never see my family. And so I was kind of thinking, in Chicago at the time, there really wasn't, I was missing eating good bread. I was living in Evanston. And, I think as like any good like book or tragedy or whatever, normally something happens and my dad literally dropped dead of a heart attack
Oh
at
my God.
62. And I had moved back to Chicago. I didn't have any family there, and I had a young son, and I was pretty depressed. And
Oh.
being Irish, you either
Mm.
start drinking or you go into a deep depression. And I channeled it into making bread. My mom bought me Tartine's cookbook. And so Chad Robertson has always been somebody that I kind of, like I'm a really good book learner. I
Hmm.
really love to take the time to read and process on my own. And his book was really instrumental
Well,
in teaching me.
yeah, that book and that bakery, the Tartine Bakery in San Francisco, was again another game
That was
changing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never met him. I've always been like, I should write to him. And I'm like, no, that's so cheesy. But I will say it here that his cookbook is, I mean, he was the reason and he was kind of the salvation from my depression to making really good bread.
Yeah, and you should write to him because he's a great guy. We've had him speak at our bread symposium, and I just recently had a conversation with him. He has now a column or a newsletter that
Yeah.
he posts regularly on what's it called, the subscript or whatever,
Oh,
and
Substack.
Substack. He's got a Substack,
Okay.
and he's been trying to encourage me to start a Substack thing. It's just a lot of work. You got to be relentless when you're doing something like that. But he's doing more of that now, and he's thinking about opening a new bakery maybe on the East Coast. So he's still in the game, and his
Yep.
books are so influential. And I knew him when he was just starting out because his first bakery, was in Point Reyes, California, not far from Santa Rosa, where my bakery was. So we watched. I got to watch him grow up because he was just a kid then. He's a little younger than me, and so it's been cool. But his book,
Yeah.
so many people have talked about how that book influenced them. And
Yeah.
is that how you kind of got into the sourdough thing? Did you use his
That
method?
is from him. Yeah. I mean, from him, my son he was young enough. I think he was like 2 or 3. He would take a nap. I would really hustle to get all the stuff together to do my bread. I would load my son into the car and we drive to Indiana to drive buy 50-pound bags of flour. I mean, it was like my whole life was like my son's schedule and my bread schedule. My son, and it really created that discipline where working through like kind of depression, it was a benefit in a sense being sad because you kind of just I channeled everything into those kind of two things and
Mm,
everything else became very simple and clear. And his method and his just like reading line like literally it was like the longest book I ever read because I would reread over and over and over until it was like so in my head that I didn't
yeah.
have to like refer to it while I was doing it.
Yeah, so in a way, it was kind of part of your salvation and journey to climb out of the despair of some very
Y-
difficult
yeah, it
family
became
things.
like
Yeah,
meditative. It was
yeah, yeah,
meditative.
yeah, and it gave you a pathway,
Hmm.
and direction in life. Um, so
Yeah,
that's from culinary school. You were already out of culinary school at this point,
yeah.
and
I was
then
out of
but you hadn't
culinary
started the
school.
bakery yet, though.
Nope, I hadn't started. I had never even worked in a bakery. And so like that's why I always think I'm like the outlier, but
It's
that's
probably a
also
good thing
why
that
I
you hadn't worked in one because if you had worked in a bakery, you might not have gone in and opened one, you know?
well, that's true. And I think that's why I was so naive about the ingredients, right? Because I
Yeah,
just assumed, like in Seattle, we always worked really closely with our farmers, right? For wherever I worked, if it was mushrooms, if it was squab, whatever it was. And so I just thought, well, gosh, when I'm back in the Midwest, I'll be able to talk to all these farmers. How awesome. And so, like, I was so naive about flowers. But and in Seattle I did have I had a pet treat business on the side, so I did like a little bit of baking because we worked with Shepherd's Grain. They had just
uh-huh.
started out at the time. And Camas Country, we had worked with them for our pet treats, but that was like not humans eating it. um so yeah, my story is so random. I just feel like I'm like I my bread journey was the one thing in my life that I've really kind of it just fits I always tell people when people come to me and ask me advice, I'm like, you know what? Don't ever disparage anything that you're doing in your life because it'll come back in another way that you never expected. And, so anything you're doing, just be happy you're learning. Always be learning because it'll only help you later.
Yeah, it's great advice. And now that you've been doing, it's hard to believe that Hewn has been open for what, almost 12 years now. You're getting on your 12th year, I think.
No, yeah, we've been open for 13, going on
13 years.
14.
It's, it goes so fast, but that makes you n not the new kid on the block. That makes you the elder, in this movement
Yeah.
now. And this is a movement that's continuing to grow. So I would imagine that now people are kind of seeking you out and looking for mentorship from you, which would be the next, aside from pizza, will be the next phase, I think, for, the natural unfolding of taking bread and doing pizzas, but also being a mentor to the next generation.
Yeah, I guess that it's like that same, it's maybe when you realized, I mean, well, you were always a teacher, and your books I actually referred to in culinary school. So, I mean, sitting with you, it's like,
Cool.
you've always been a mentor through your cookbooks to me. So it's nice to meet face to face, but from my standpoint, it's a weird process because I still feel like I don't have much to impart to
Well,
people,
but you already have, I mean, just even in this conversation, what you were talking about is, turning every opportunity, every experience into a learning experience is a great piece of life wisdom, which, and that's what people are seeking from you is they want wisdom. The techniques they can learn, but they want wisdom, and the wisdom only can come from living life.
Yeah.
And so you'll be doing more of that, Ellen. I can tell you that.
All right. Well, I'll welcome that.
Yeah.
However I can help.
uh, I'm reading a book now, a book about the filmmaker Nora Ephron, who was
Hmm.
who did When Harry Met Sally and uh, Sleepless in Seattle. Great filmmaker, director, and writer. And when she was raised, her parents were creative filmmakers as well. And her mom always used to teach her that when every time Nora would have some kind of a crisis in her life, her mom would just say, "Everything is copy for your next book."
Yeah,
And
that's
and
that's right.
and sure enough, and I was just listening and watching the news today, and the all over the news, the big story in national news today. I'm talking to you today on I think it's what are we, August 27th or so, and that the big story is Taylor Swift's getting married. And
Yeah.
if there's someone who's has converted that piece of knowledge and wisdom from Nora Ephron that everything is copy. I mean, she's made a career out of, just putting her life out there, and people love her for it. As a result, they feel like when everything good that happens to her, people have jumped on the bandwagon and are celebrating with her because they feel like she's been telling their story as well. So
Well,
you're
I
doing
heard,
it with
yeah,
bread.
but our my business partner and my wife, Julie, she's a huge Taylor Swift fan, and she listened, I guess she was on a podcast with now her fiance, and she was talking about her sourdough starter. And Julie's like, she does a sourdough starter too. Makes bread.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. In fact, during the pandemic, the whole sourdough thing just exploded, right?
Yeah, it really yeah, it leaps and bounds. Everybody had a starter.
Did you find that your book, when it came out just in the right time, did you get a little bump in sales as a result of all that
I
interest
think
in sourdough?
yeah, we definitely got a bump. And we got, a lot more kind of exposure for that because people were at home and trying to learn. So the book did pretty well during that period. And now people are like, when's the second book? I'm like, I don't
Ah,
know.
what do you think? It's a
That's
lot of
you,
work, isn't
you
it, putting a book
it's
together?
so much work. Yeah. I feel like there's so many other mediums now that are maybe better.
That's true. In fact, you're right, because it's getting harder and harder to publish a book that, unless you're a celebrity of some sort, to
Mhm.
publish a book, because all that information is now available almost for free, on the internet,
Yeah.
or you can stream it or whatever else. So the mediums have changed a lot, and for those people who have written a book, you'll know this, and those who haven't, you need to know it is a lot of work to write a book. It's
Mm.
not it's not as easy as it looks. When you look at the book, you're seeing a finished product, just like you're seeing a finished loaf of bread. But everything that went into getting it to be so polished is part of the it's part of that craft. It's everything is artisan and craft in the sense of putting out something beautiful.
It is, yeah. I think a video of some sort as I build the pizza oven, bread oven on the farm is going to be more interesting, and just projects of how you
Yeah.
build the infrastructure.
Well, that'll be cool. And yes, I hope you do document all that because that's that people are going to those mediums more than ever. Before we run out of time, let me ask you a couple questions about the craft itself of bread baking. So, in order to achieve what you described so beautifully as uh, good bread is airy, not at all dry, light, but also rich, satisfying, and soulful. What are a couple tips that you could provide to people who are baking, whether it's at home or professionally, that help get you to that level of quality and that experience? The experience, I think there's something so rich and satisfying, as you said, of biting into a properly made loaf of bread or a slice of bread, that it's hard to describe. You can't put it in words. You just have to. You want to experience it. But how do you get
Yeah.
your loaves to perform that way?
Like targeting like the home baker, I think the biggest advice I say is literally just allow yourself to make a lot of mistakes and
Mm,
just not, like that loaf you make, you're always going to make it better probably the next time. And so like in terms of just the process, I think especially people today are so just instant gratification, right? So like kind of like going along the quest, it's like the whole journey of how you get there is the whole purpose, where it's like work with really good ingredients. Don't try and rush it into like, don't try and make bread when you have a few hours of the day, right? Like it actually is a 2 week process in many ways, right? And
right.
it's also that repetition of plan to make bread every day for 2 weeks, right? Like however you do it every day so that you can start improving and seeing the difference. And your loaf from like day one to day 14, you'll be like so impressed with yourself if you commit to, it's like a workout regimen, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like commit to it.
And then when somebody gives you, like the sigh of joy from biting into your loaf of bread, then it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and like for me, it's why I started the Underground Bread Club, because it was my way to learn and not like I needed to make a lot of loaves and I could only eat one loaf. So I got about 100 people in my community that would buy from me every week. And so
Uh-huh.
that's how I got like you have to do volume to be able to
Hmm.
like get yourself, good.
Yeah, yeah. So is that how you had an underground bread club? Were those your first,
Yeah.
the first customers for your breads?
So the first 3 years, I had about 100 customers, and my son and I would deliver. That's why I'm always like, Asher, why aren't you studying business at school? You started a business. You were like the groundwork, but
Yeah.
he has no interest. But we went around and delivered bread. He was in his little burly bike, and I piled bread on top of him, and we would go and deliver bread to people's houses, and everyone left their doors unlocked. So he was my mule. He ran the bread in, collected the money, and came out. But that's how I made the first 3 years. Trial and error was just making
Yes.
bread for people.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I always say that freshly baked bread is always a hit, no matter how it turns out. And so
That's
the only one
right.
who's usually not satisfied is you, the baker, because you go, I could do better, I could do better, I could do better.
That's
But
right.
that's part of the journey. That's why I say it's more about the quest than it is about the pizza. And
It is.
it sounds like that's what you're saying as well, is enjoy the journey and enjoy the quest.
Yeah, exactly. And your house will always smell good, even if it doesn't taste good.
Well, the book is called Heritage Baking: Recipes for Rustic Breads and Pastries Made with Artisan Flour from Hewn Bakery. Now, if people can't get artisan flour, like they don't have a connection with local growers and millers, can they make these recipes from your book using commercial flour like King Arthur and General Mills type flour that they can get at the supermarket?
Yeah, I would say like using organic flour just because the enzymatic activity, and
Oh,
so if they can find, a good like central milling, or I
yeah.
mean most people can order it online, even a 10 pound
That's
bag.
a new option that we didn't have in the old days. That now you can actually send for it.
Yeah, I would say like splurge a little bit and get some of the flour, ship it, find your region, take a little road trip. It's so fun
Ah,
to
yeah, yeah,
connect. I mean,
yeah.
it's like like the whole thing, make it an experience where you're learning something new about your region. Every region, like you were saying, there are, there is regional flour pretty
So
much
you
in every
could,
region.
yeah, you could do an internet search then. In other words, it just puts the keywords like local regional mills, flour mills, or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah, and you'll
and then
find it.
and then make contact with them. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice right there.
Or
So,
call a bakery that is in your area that you know is doing sourdough and working, and see if they'll sell you some flour.
do you think that there is a qualitative and noticeably qualitative difference in working with these locally grown and regionally milled flours from the everyday flour that we can buy at the market?
Yes. I mean, from the look of it, it's a darker, the crumb is darker because it's got more of the Brandon germ in it. It definitely imparts more of sometimes a nutty, sometimes an earthy flavor, depending on the variety. I think it, for sure imparts flavor. I mean, the terroir of where the wheat is grown, definitely. I mean, I'm not going to be to the point where I'm like tasting flour like I do wine, but I think that um, it imparts something unique that is maybe not as tangible for you to discern, but you know it when you taste it.
Like anything, like good wine, you've got to start with good grapes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you can make wine from, any day, any grapes, but to have great wine, you need great grapes. And I guess
yeah.
that's true with. Do you make other breads besides wheat-based breads? You do rye breads and things like that at the
But we
bakery?
do rye. Yep, we do rye. We do a rye bread. We make a Durham bread. We
And all
do
that's
what?
all that's from locally sourced
Yeah,
grain.
yeah.
Wow.
It's all from local source. So we have local Durham, einkorn. We have different heritage varieties. We have local rye. We have all that I mean, the Midwest is where it's at. We've got all the
That's right. Well,
fields.
it sounds like you can do it all. Are there any grains that are particularly difficult and tricky to work with? For instance, I get a lot of letters, emails from folks asking for help with their einkorn breads because it's not an easy flour they feel to work with. Are you noticing that, or have any tips for working with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, for einkorn, we make a Midwest blend where we cut einkorn into it. Sometimes it can be 50% of the
I say,
recipe, and then we'll add spelt and like a red fife or a turkey red. So it'll be like a 50-30-20
yeah,
ratio.
yeah.
We don't make 100% einkorn just for that nature. I mean, it's just not enjoyable
It's
in
yeah, all
my
right. So
mind.
so it's a cool thing because it's like the oldest of flowers, and at the same time, it's not maybe you've got to learn how to work with it. It's not going to just turn
Yeah,
into a perfect
it's
bread just because it's old.
Yeah, it's like just because people wore togas back in the Roman days, that's
Yeah.
not comfortable now. So like, I'm not
Right.
gonna, I have the same
But you
mentality.
you could call that your toga bread.
Yeah, it's your toga bread. If you want to wear a toga around town, feel free, but it's,
Do
not
you address
advised.
any of these issues in the book itself? Do you talk about these different properties of the flowers?
Somewhat, when this book was, Peter, when the book was actually worked on, it was like 2018, right? So this was
Yeah.
still early days. So
Right. Right.
like it talks about kind of just allowing yourself to experiment with different varieties, more knowing the properties of is it a hard winter? Is it a soft wheat? Why does that matter?
Uh-huh.
But even now, the varieties that you have access to has grown. And so I mean, there's over 100,000 varieties of wheat, and
Mm,
and we didn't have that much growing at the time. So almost updating this book would be useful because
mm.
the access and the knowledge about all of this is so much, more robust.
Yeah.
So it's more, I kind of tried to be a little higher level of like, here's how you analyze if a farmer says, oh, I have this variety, growing right now, can red. What is it? Is it a hard red? Is it a red wheat? Is it a white wheat? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it winter? Is it spring? And then what's the protein so that they can kind of like understand what that means.
And there was a time when, what you just said, the sentence you just said, most people would go, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know where all these gradings in red and white and this. But now a lot of bakers do. I mean, it's like the public has grown with the bread movement to have an
Yeah.
understanding of this terminology in a way that, that maybe the books and the great bakeries that are happening have helped to bring about that education and awareness. But there's still a lot of nuance. So I think, for those of you who are enjoying this conversation but aren't sure everything that Ellen's talking about, get the book, Heritage
Yeah.
Baking: Recipes for Rustic Breads. And by rustic breads, what do you mean by rustic breads? It's rustic breads and pastries, by the way, not just breads, made with artisan flour from Hewn Bakery. So what is a rustic bread?
I think it's like it's kind of like what we described. It's where, well, first off, I would say it's always flawed, right? I feel like
Look.
there's always a flaw in it, which makes it unique and look
Right.
rustic.
And it doesn't
It's
look,
not,
every bread is not a carbon copy of the other loaves from the batch. They're all unique and
that's it.
individual. Yeah, yeah.
They're
I
all
think of
unique.
rustic as I always think of a rustic bread as being higher in hydration, higher in water content. Would you say that your breads are is the dough pretty hydrated?
Yeah, I mean, we operated around, and I don't want to get too geeky for it, but it's about 73 to 75% hydration,
Hmm.
sometimes 76%. So it is definitely higher hydration. It's made with the starter 100%.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
so that makes it right there. I would call it a rustic bread. The crust is that kind of hard exterior where it's got that nice deep amber caramel color in areas. Gosh, I'm
It's part of
hungry.
the joy of bread is just looking at it and smelling it before you even eat it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, Ellen, we could talk all day. You and I could probably talk all day about this kind of stuff, but we got a life to live. So
You,
I want to thank you so much for joining us on Pizza Quest today, and I look forward to getting back out to Evans. It's been a long time since I've been to Chicago, and I miss the whole area. And congratulations on all your success. Congratulations on this new cabin that you're rehabbing and building, out in the country. And let me know how your wood fired oven. I think when you get a chance, look up the Forno Bravo oven catalog and see if what they're doing. I know that you're aware of the Alan Scott sort of heritage of wood-fired baking here, and now a number of companies have come along to make wood-fired baking or your brick oven baking, possible for folks that don't want to build it from scratch the way that Alan Scott did it, in his day. And anyway, let us know if Forno Bravo is one of our sponsors for Pizza Quest. So if there's anything we can do to help you research that oven,
yeah,
let us know. And then once you get it up and running, I'll see if I can jump on a plane and come up there and have some of your bread, right from the oven, right? And maybe some of
that sounds.
your pizza. I'm waiting for that pizza now from you on your dough.
Yeah, well, yeah, me too. And I would love to have you come out. So I appreciate the time you've spent, and it's really honestly an honor to be talking to you because you are a pillar. And I remember reading your books back in culinary school way too long
Well,
ago.
thank you for that, and I'm inviting you now to join the next generation of being the mentors for the ones behind us, and
Okay,
so that's the paying it forward of all the work that you've done, and thanks for sharing, your quest and your journey, which I think is going to strike a chord for a lot of people who are listening today. Thank you, Ellen King.
thank you.
Again, Hewn Bakery. Keep that metaphor in mind, and we'll see you. We'll see you. I'll see you personally one of these days soon. And thank all of you for joining us today. And we'll see you on the next episode of Pizza Quest. Thanks. Pizza Quest with Peter Reinhardt is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.